the years cannot sever.
Can you tell me what was there to love about Princeton?
Oh, how can you ask? It's been part of my life since I was a kid. It was a tremendous feeling to have responsibility for a place as important as Princeton.
For much of the 20th century, Bob Goheen's life was at Princeton. And for a good portion of that time, the life of Princeton depended on Bob Goheen. During his presidency, the world's issues became Princeton's issues. In his guidance was an inner voice, which bore testimony to Adlai Stevenson's observation that in quiet places, reason abounds. Born in India to medical missionaries, he received his undergraduate degree in classics in 1940, and after a stint in the Army, returned to earn his Ph.D. in classics in 1948. A mere 9 years later, in succeeding Harold Dodds, he became, at 37, the third youngest president in Princeton's history.
WPRB presents a special program devoted to the selection of Assistant Professor of Classics Robert F. Goheen as President of Princeton University.
After the presidential search had been going on a while, a number of my faculty friends say, "We hear you're on the list." And I said, "Well, that's nonsense. Why would they look at a youngster like me?"
Under the pretext of wanting the views of younger faculty, the trustees asked Bob to meet.
I was completely relaxed. I didn't think it related to me at all. I told them quite candidly what I thought about Princeton and what some of its problems were and what its tremendous potential was, and about individuals who I thought would be or not be good presidents. So I had a ball.
Sometime later, Bob was spending the weekend in Connecticut when he received an unusual phone call.
Mr. Helm said, "Some of us trustees would like to meet with you Sunday morning in New York. Can you make it?" And I said, "Mr. Helm, it's a great honor, but right now I'm with my roommate and his wife, and we don't get away very often, and can't it be some other time?" And he said, "No," he said, "I think it's important. You better come."
Professor Goheen's election was announced by Harold H. Helm, chairman of the executive committee of the University Board of Trustees.
There were 5 trustees, the senior most of the trustees. We chatted a little while. They gave me a glass of sherry, and they said they wanted me to be president of the university. And I almost went through the floor, but I said yes, I would try it.
He was described by his predecessor as an intellectual who can hit 225-yard drives down the fairway.
If one believes as intensely in the importance of a liberal education for our times as I do, then Princeton is a wonderful place to work for.
One of the most senior and I must say powerful Princeton trustees said to me, "University's in a great financial shape, and you won't have to spend a lot of time raising money. You can concentrate on education." Well, even as an assistant professor, I knew that wasn't the way things were here.
Anything that you try to do well is going to cost money. I'm sure a good television show, Mr. Morrow, is an expensive operation.
Harvard took the lead and boldly launched a $92 million capital campaign, the first thing of its kind certainly in our times. And that emboldened us to start to work right away and develop a capital campaign, which I guess we announced sometime in late '58 or early '59 for $53 million.
We'll next go out to the Windy City. We report $2,496,000. Hooray! Thank you, Donald. God bless you.
You think $53 million is nothing in current currency, but in the 1950s it was a hell of a lot of money.
For some perspective, $53 million was about half the cost of the Soviet Union's Sputnik space program, the success of which was on everyone's mind when Goheen was interviewed by Edward R. Murrow in 1958.
Dr. Goheen, are you troubled at all by the Sputnik-inspired suggestions for crash programs in the sciences?
Today, a new moon is in the sky.
I really do believe that Sputnik generated in America a much renewed and heightened sense of the importance of higher education. In the next 10 years or so, resources came to the universities that had just been quite out of their reach before.
These assets will pay large dividends for Princeton in the years ahead.
President Goheen has just made the opening address to dedicate the new building for the Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs.
Ladies and gentlemen, from Ken McCart, we say thank you very much indeed, and good night.
I think I confessed that through most of my life until the early 60s, I had been largely oblivious to the issue of race in this country. Then as these reports started to come out of the South about civil rights activities there, and it led me to try to see what we could do to increase the racial diversity of the Princeton campus. Not easy, because as we found out, blacks who might academically be eligible, many were turned away from Princeton because of its reputation as having been a place which rejected black, and not the least because of Woodrow Wilson's activity as president in denying blacks entry into the civil service. That was a shocker. Wilson had, to me, always been a hero, and it was up until this time, and suddenly I learned about what he'd done with respect to the blacks in Washington. And it was clear he was a Southern racist. We just were not in touch with this whole segment of our society. There were going to be influential players in the society. I saw that women were playing an increasingly influential role in this world. Princeton had fallen behind in this respect.
If Princeton doesn't have girls here, it's going to lose out on the top students in the nation.
That was an important factor for us. We like to think we're dealing with the future movers and shakers of the country, and for some that just refused to come and be educated here for that reason was a great shock. I asked Harold Dodge, the ranking trustee, chairman of the executive committee, if he would head a committee to study the issue of coeducation. And Harold said, "But I don't believe in it." And I said, "Harold, I didn't ask you to believe in it, I asked you to study it."
Princeton University in Princeton, New Jersey today announced the end of its all-male educational tradition.
It's like making history. I'm a pioneer.
In retrospect, is there anything you wish you could have done differently?
I hate to sound like President Bush, because I think things went well.
We like education.
Diversity, pushing the effort to get more blacks and other minorities into the university body, whether it be student body or faculty, and then the women. I think both of those changed the character of Princeton for the better. Those are the things I'd be most proud of, I think, yeah.
I have concluded that the time has come for action.
Looking backwards, I realized that my first decade, from 57 to 67, was a wonderfully calm time on the campus.
This is not an invasion of Cambodia.
It happened to be this night the university was receiving a bunch of distinguished Russian scientists. Toward the end of the evening, in prospect, word came that the incursion into Cambodia had occurred.
A packed crowd of over 2,300 persons in the Princeton University Chapel.
Immediately followed by all kinds of noise of people rallying people to come to the chapel for a demonstration. At that initial point. I had no idea it was what kind of demonstration it was going to be, but I asked the Russians if they wanted to go.
So instead of going to our classes, I say let's go into the streets. Not to burn this country down, but to remake this country.
The reaction on the campuses was swift and predictable.
It was madness. You could smell the marijuana in the air and see students who were stoned and walking around as though the world was their oyster.
Princeton students called for a nationwide student strike.
We are on strike, yes. That's very clear.
I saw the Russians quietly remove themselves.
A rather disorganized scene as hundreds of people turned to look at Princeton President Robert Goheen.
I sat there and decided it certainly was not the time for anybody official to try to intervene. It would just be a travesty to try to do that.
When our reporter proposed that Goheen talk to us, he seemed visibly shaken.
I think I've made my position on the war clear many times.
I went from being a quiet proponent of that war to being a very quite outspoken opponent of it.
I do not believe to strike against the university because it's the nearest thing at hand makes any sense.
We never completely closed our doors academically, and I thought that was important.
2 years earlier, the university had implemented a series of reforms aimed at involving students and faculty more actively in the university's decision-making. In May of 1970, as some campuses erupted in violence, Princeton stayed peaceful.
We had 2 general assemblies in Jadwin Hall where everybody from the university and community were invited to come and sound off. And I think that was just a healthy airing of frustration and anger and so on.
Those in favor of the amendment? Mr. Kamen, excuse me, I didn't see your hand.
We also had 10 faculty meetings, and that was quite wonderful because the core of the Princeton faculty really rallied around and took all of this seriously.
I would like to move that this faculty give you a standing ovation for the fair, orderly, friendly fashion in which you have conducted our deliberations, conducive to the unity of this faculty during these difficult times.
My only response is that it's a great faculty to work with, just as it's a great student body to work with.
In March of 1971, Bob Goheen announced his retirement, saying the university would profit from fresh leadership. He left office in 1972 after 15 years as Princeton's president. That year, he became president of the Council on Foundations. In January 1977, he became president of the Edna McConnell Clark Foundation. Less than 5 months later, however, he was appointed ambassador to India, the country of his birth, by President Carter.
I thought to be an ambassador you had to either be very, very rich or a very active member of the political party if you're president. I was neither rich nor was I a political partisan, so it was a nice shock to be invited just in a sense just for me because I knew something about the country.
Dr. Tillman, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear.
I do solemnly swear.
That I will
In 2001, 32 years after Princeton admitted women on his watch, Goheen participated in installation ceremonies for the university's first woman president.
We took in women students quite a long time ago. It was certainly in time to get more women high in the administration, and here she's ended right at the top, which is great. Yeah.
I, for one, today feel full of good hope.
I don't know what my legacy is, but I might say that I was able to start a process of change in the university, creative change, which has been carried forward by each one of my successors. I don't know if that's a legacy or not, but anyhow, it's very gratifying to see that the university's not stopped and said, now we've done it, we're there, let's just continue to do what we're doing.
I just want to ask if there's anything on your mind that we haven't discussed that you want to record for posterity?
I don't think so. You've drawn me out very well, Dan, and we've talked now for 4 hours, and I think I've spilled all the beans, as they say.